Are Americans being lied to about Donald Trump's civil case in New York? One of the most prominent venture capitalists in North America, Kevin O'Leary, just lambasted the current New York trial against Donald Trump as an attempt to bring him down before the election. Kevin, being a Canadian, has very little skin in the game with American politics, and this latest interview on CNN probably turned out very different to what the network was expecting. Let's watch this next clip and you'll see why.
If you're a developer and you've got a building on a block anywhere in America and it's worth, let's say, $500 million, and you want to build a building right beside it, you go to the bank and say, this building is worth $500 million. I'd like to borrow a construction finance loan against this asset, and I want you to tell me it's worth $500 million too. And the bank negotiates with you and says, well, no, we think it's worth $400 million. And you fight it out. You're always trying to show your assets in the brightest light with the sunshine you could possibly determine for them. You want them to be worth the very most, because you're only going to get a 40 or 50% loan to value, as it's called.
You know something that New York real estate has particularly been under the spotlight for over the decades? It's that almost every realtor inflates the square footage of their properties and exaggerates the market value in their quoting price. And if you look at this particular case with Donald Trump as it regards to his towers and properties in Manhattan, that's the charge being leveled against him for using inflated values to obtain favorable loans. But Judge Arthur Engoron, who's overseeing this case, has earlier been criticized by real estate agents around a similar case, that of the valuation of the Mar-a-Lago resort. Realtors have consistently pointed out the fact that property valuations in an open market are higher and usually negotiated for a middle ground between the two parties. Those two parties in this case were Donald Trump and the German bank called Deutsche Bank, that loaned him hundreds of millions of dollars over decades against his properties for further development projects. And now Kevin O'Leary, being an avid real estate investor himself and a frequent face on the show Shark Tank, has openly called out and questioned the motives of the trial itself. It's important to remember here that it's a bench trial and there's no jury here in this particular case in New York, which means Judge Arthur is ultimately the one who's going to decide Trump's case and his business future in the city.
Forget about Trump. Every single real estate developer everywhere on earth does this. They always talk about their asset being worth a lot, and the bank says no. And that's just the way it is. So in this case, when I'm trying to figure out, and I'm not pro or con, or I don't care about the politics, who lost money? Nobody. The bank got paid back the construction finance loan, and a new building was built. And if you're going to sue this case and win, you got to sue every real estate developer everywhere. This is all they do. This is what they do all day long, every day. So I don't think this thing will ever survive appeal, regardless of what the fine is. This doesn't even make sense.
And that's the most important part of the story that no one seems to be focusing on. The bank that loaned Donald Trump the money actually had a long partnership with him over decades and came out saying that Trump had not defaulted on his loans with the lender. That means the two most important parties to the matter have no contention other than what Attorney General Letitia James tries to paint. Whether you agree with Donald Trump's critique of the trial as a witch hunt or not, it's clear that Kevin does not believe the selectiveness of the case against Donald Trump for something that every single realtor in the business does is not something worth talking about in real estate. Every stable and profitable property or project can potentially become the jumping board for another one, using it as collateral for loans to finance more projects. In this process, there's bound to be back and forth between lenders and borrowers over the exact market value of the properties. Even more so, there's going to be relationships built between the banks and high-profile clients, allowing for greater flexibility and mutual benefit through a long-term cooperation. The absence of any of these facts from the prosecution led by Letitia James makes some people stop and think about what the motives really are.
How about the fact that you can get a tax benefit for having overvalued or having a different value that's actually normal? Doesn't that deprive the state of revenue? Is that enough, do you think? I know you're laughing, but this is rich people problems are very different than my world. Go ahead.
And I mean, I get it. I totally get it. And you're making a valid point. But it's humorous in the sense that you have to sue every single real estate developer here in Miami, in Chicago, in Los Angeles, in Detroit, in Dallas. This is what they do every day.
It actually doesn't deprive the state of revenue, but gives it a bigger potentially taxable amount in the end. But put that to the side, the mere fact the same law isn't being used to prosecute much of the city's real estate market shows a singling out of Donald Trump that is bound to raise some eyebrows. It's a practice known as appraisal inflation in the real estate circles, and is a very common way of convincing banks to give out favoring loans. Now, that may look to be not the most by-the-book kind of way to expand the real estate business, but Donald Trump is certainly one in a sea of names that could be prosecuted for it. It's something that Kevin O'Leary understands, and it's also something that Donald Trump has repeatedly said himself about the case. If the judge decides the verdict, it would deal a serious blow to Donald Trump's property empire in New York City, and basically put him out of business by having his license revoked. It remains to be seen whether the Attorney General Letitia James is able to bring that legal weight against Trump in the coming months.
The first question, is everybody doing it in real estate? Yes, everybody's doing it. Not only domestically, all around the world. This is how it works, okay? Now, you don't want to be Donald Trump and get embroiled in what looks like, I mean, it looks to me in this presidential race, and I'm not in favor of this, that the courts are being used to try and sway voters on both sides of the equation. I don't understand why we're trying to, impeach Biden. What a waste of time. And his son and all this stuff and all of this litigation on Trump hasn't moved the needle for either of these candidates.
If only it was that easy. It's true that much of the American public has grown tired of the endless back and forth between the parties, just trying to bring each other down, but the mere fact that it's happening from both sides means it's very unlikely to cool down at any time soon. We're a few months from the election and neither candidates have bothered to explain their policy positions or justify their previous performance. Instead, they're bogged down by endless and pointless legal battles along with their electorates. As we enter 2024, attention and accountability have never been so important. With multiple wars starting and an economic downturn predicted this year, there's just not enough time for people to remain distracted with political trivialities that ultimately do not impact the life and well-being of the ordinary American citizen. Understanding this fact about politics and the truth that most politicians are mostly in it for themselves is the first step toward taking stock of your own life. As it stands now, Donald Trump's litigations are likely to continue for the next several months, only to accelerate the bigger he gets and the closer the election comes. That means there's bound to be much more heated friction and debate around the candidates. What you can do as an individual is understand which debate warrants your time and effort, versus which conversation is merely a distraction that's preventing you from focusing on more important things that deserve your attention.